Good.
Okay, awesome. Well, today I just want to talk a little bit about a different way of thinking about course design, especially for those of us who have been in traditional education. So, this way does not start with a textbook, it doesn't start with a calendar, but it starts with a question. What do we want students to be able to do when they leave the class? Competency-based education flips the script, and today I'm going to talk about how it does that just a little bit. I wish I could tell you I could walk you through the entire design process, but I can't do that in 30 minutes. I don't even think I could do that in 2 hours, but I want to talk about kind of a broad overview of it all. So first, I'm Brandy Westmoreland, and here is my experience with CBE. I've been in the CBE realm since 2015, so over a decade. Not as good as Kurt, but I have worked for the largest organizations in America, for-profit, nonprofit, four-year colleges, small community colleges, and I can say that I have seen some amazing, amazing programs come out of CBE. I believe in CBE. I've seen it change so many students' lives. I have also seen some real flops in CBE, and so I've benefited from that. I know what works, I know what doesn't work. And with that, I want to talk about the course design process because I currently work as an instructional designer, and I'd say I work about half with faculty and half with people outside of education. So, for instance, I built a public administration bachelor's degree. For that, I worked with the city attorney. I worked on a nursing program and I worked with a charge nurse. So, that type of thing. Right now, I'm actually working with the director of a mental hospital. He's helping me build some organizational leadership courses. So, in the chat, which group do you think might have the hardest time building CBE courses? Who do you think would struggle? You think it's the police chiefs, the nurses, the attorneys? What would you think? HR? HR actually didn't struggle at all. Yeah. So it's actually a trick question. It's faculty. It's faculty. Faculty within education seem to have the hardest time sometimes with CBE. Why is that? Why do they struggle so much? Well, I think there are a couple of reasons. I can't say definitively, but part of the issue is we tend to teach the way that we were taught. And so I know that before I was ever an instructional designer, I was an English professor at a community college, and I knew what works for me and what I liked, and that was very much based on what my own professors did in my educational experience. And we may not even realize that we have those kind of biases and expectations, but we definitely do. And it's hard to make that transition. I think another issue is that there's a lack of training. We just aren't having enough conversations about what is CBE? What can it involve? And that's why I'm so glad to be here today, just having a conversation about it, talking about it. What are best practices? What ideas do you have? What are the cool things that are happening in CBE? I could talk about that all the time. And then I think there's this question about the assessment piece. What counts as CBE? I know I recently talked with a math instructor and he said, look, I get how welding can be CBE, right? You show the weld. I've shown that I can do the weld, but how can math be CBE? I don't see how math can be CBE. And I said, well, show you do the math. Show that you can do the math, just like you're showing that you can do the weld. So we just need to be having these conversations. That's really important. But before we talk about how to design courses, I want to talk for a moment about mindset. I truly think that mindset is everything. And I want to start off by talking about cake, specifically birthday cake. Think about a birthday cake, a big, beautiful, grand birthday cake. What do we do with birthday cake? Well, We're all going to gather around it. We're going to sing happy birthday. We're going to take a bunch of pictures in front of it. It's going to be sliced. It's going to be shared. That birthday cake is traditional education. It's structured, it's performative, it's time bound, and it's like a shared experience, right? Now think about cupcakes. Cupcakes are smaller portions and they can be a little bit easier to serve. If I go to a third grade Valentine party, I hope they have cupcakes instead of regular cake because then I don't have to deal with knives and plates and forks and all of that. And the cool thing about cupcakes is you can personalize them. You can have chocolate and you can have vanilla, and yours can even be gluten-free, right? The cupcakes are CBE. They're individual they can be personalized, they're manageable portions. I do not believe that one will ever replace the other. Both are dessert, they're both cake, they're both delicious, but they have different purposes, different occasions. One's going to be appropriate here in this setting, and one's going to be appropriate here. And the same is true about education. So I want you to think about that birthday cake. And I want you to think about how you would turn a birthday cake into a cupcake. If somebody asked you to do it, it could be done. It's going to be messy. It's going to be wasteful. I guess what you'd have to do is like get a cookie cutter and, stamp some pieces out and put it into a cupcake liner. You'd have to refrost the top. It wouldn't be the best way to do it, but it could be done. But here's the thing. You don't want to try to retrofit a cake into a cupcake. That doesn't make sense. That's not the best way to do it. Designing cupcakes as cupcakes from the very beginning, from the batter stage, is the best way to do it. And you know what? The same thing is true about education. So sometimes we see that faculty who have online courses already can actually struggle more than those who don't have an online course because you're trying to turn that cake into a cupcake. So when I'm working with faculty, one thing I really want to try to do for CBE is design on paper. I have a template in a Word document that I send, and it has some boxes. Step away from the course shell, step away from Blackboard. What you want to do is you want to be strategic and deliberate and intentional about designing this course as CBE from the very beginning.
Brandy,
Yes.
we lost your slides.
What?
Yeah, I saw the cupcake for a minute and it's gone.
Okay. Well, now I don't have the ability to share again. So can you try to make me a host again?
Let me, that might take the other
Ah,
guys.
the cupcakes are the best part.
I know, they were beautiful. Let's see.
Oh, now I see it again.
Okay, can you share?
I sure can.
Okay,
Okay, how about now? How are we feeling?
beautiful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Let me know if that happens again. Weird.
Okay,
So, in a traditional class, when I taught English at the community college, what I asked myself is, what am I going to cover this 45-minute class period? Or when I made an online class, what are we going to do this week? But when you're designing competency-based courses, you want to begin with the end in mind. You really want to ask yourself, what should students be able to do or demonstrate at the end of the course? So here are the steps that I like for designing a CBE course. And I've probably designed hundreds at this point, and this is what I found works best. First, you want to develop the competencies. What do we want students to be able to do? Then you want to look at the evidence. How are you going to measure that they can do it? How do you prove it, right? That's the assessment piece. Then finally, how are you going to teach it? So developing the competencies, I'll be honest, this is the hardest part. This takes the longest. Before you write a competency, I would encourage you to think about a student who just finished your course. They have the course listed on their transcript as passed. What do you want them to be able to successfully do without any help? Those are the competencies that you want to develop. And I think today students are looking for real world as much as possible. So instead of a competency like understand team leadership, maybe you want to be able to lead a team through an organizational change. I've found that around 5 to 10 competencies for an average rigorous college level class works best. You don't want to have 27, and you don't want to have just one. 5 to 10 competencies for the course works. So here are some example competencies. Biology. Maybe you're going to describe cell structures and genetic mechanisms and evolutionary processes supported by science. And in English, maybe compose academic essays that integrate research and demonstrate critical analysis and use correct grammar. And in math, maybe you're going to solve different types of equations. What's important is that you want to use those strong Bloom's verbs like design, evaluate, describe, compose, create, because we want students to be able to do something. And remember, in your average course, you want about 5 to 10 of these, 5 to 10 competencies. And if you want to start with I always go to AI and I say, here's what I'm trying to do. Give me 20 possible competencies. And it gives me something to think about, something to work with. Okay, I like this one. I'm going to change it this way. Just gives you something to use. So I want to walk you through a supervision class that I recently designed. This is part of an organizational leadership class, and it is designed so that students can go out into the workforce and be supervisors and know what they're doing. So I met with the faculty group that works on this supervision class, and I said, okay, we're building a CBE course on supervision. Tell me what students need to be able to do. And they said, okay, well, this class is about. And that's what I get pretty frequently. This class is it's about goal setting. It's about motivation or team building. And you really need to step away from that. Don't tell me what the class is about. We want to ask ourselves what students should be able to do. So when they leave the course, we want them to be able to create clear and measurable team goals aligned with organizational objectives. That is a competency. So not topics, but competencies. That's what you have to establish first. Then, once you've done that, once you've got the competencies, which are the key to competency-based education, then you can start looking at the evidence, at the proof. Okay, so show me that students can do what we're wanting them to do. And we're going to do this before we design a single lesson. In CBE, the expectations are transparent. Here's the competency, here's the evidence you need to produce, and here's how we're going to measure it and judge it and evaluate it. Everything's on the table with CBE. You can use tests, you can use assignments or papers. In this day of AI, I really like to ask students to do video assignments. So we have an education course where we ask students, okay, here's a scenario, you've got this student, here's a situation. What things would you say to the parent at the parent-teacher conference? You need to record yourself saying what you would say to the parents so that you can figure out how to best word it and what information to include. I also like case studies. Let's look at a case study. Here is the organization. Here's the issue that they're having. How would you fix it? Those real world skills, students love that. They see the value in it. It's practical to them. So going back to that supervision course, remember that the goal isn't just for students to know the vocabulary. So first we said, oh, maybe we should test students, give them a test for that competency. But that wouldn't really work because we want them to be able to do the thing, right? Create the goal. And just writing a paper about the importance of goals, that doesn't that doesn't really help them be able to create the goal. We want them to be able to do the thing. We want the student to be able to leave the class and go to an employer and know how to make SMART goals. So we ended up with an assignment where let's create a case study, let's tell them about an organization, and they're going to create a SMART goal that's aligned with the organizational objectives. So the assignment was something like this. It was a lot more detailed. But the goal really was to make it authentic and relevant so that students had to think through. There's a lot going on here, right? You have to know strategic objectives, you have to know SMART goals. Um, so once you've figured out what the competency is and how you're going to measure the competency, this is when you start to design the plan. How do we get them there? How do we help students get the skills that they need to be able to do that? What are they going to read or view or watch? And for faculty, this is where we have to be really careful. I told you my background is English. I have a PhD in English. I'm going to admit, I like to diagram sentences. I do. I think you can understand a lot about your language and grammar when you diagram sentences. And when I used to teach in the community college, I thought that was a valuable use of class time. Let's learn how to diagram sentences. And when I look back, a big part of that class was supposed to be about writing persuasive essays. And diagramming sentences didn't really help them do that. It didn't help them write a persuasive essay. It really didn't. So you have to look for what leads to mastery and teach that and only that, right? I know that textbooks are a big part of teaching, and we find the textbooks we like. And okay, I'm going to use this textbook. I'm going to cover chapter 4, chapter 6. And when I work with individuals building courses, I say, nope, you're not allowed to tell me that. You're not allowed to tell me that we're covering chapter 4 or covering chapter 6. You have to say what competency that we are covering, because it's not about the book. The book is not driving this course design process. It's supposed to be about the competency. So it is a shift. So back to supervision, back to what we're asking them to do. We've got a lot of different concepts that they have to look at. They have to know SMART goals and organizational objectives and alignment, and they have to be able to write since they're going to write clear goals. Well, when I worked with this group of faculty on supervision, they're like, we have a really good textbook. And so we'll just throw this textbook chapter in there. It'll work great. And this textbook chapter, it covered a lot of really interesting things like transactional leadership and transformational leadership and the scholars and the history of leadership. Really interesting stuff. But that did not help students be able to actually create goals or like manage the team scenario or any of that. It helped maybe with definitions, but it didn't help them do the thing that we were asking them to do. So studying leadership theory is okay, but the book actually wasn't enough. So instead of their beloved textbook chapter that they thought they were going to use, they actually ended up using a YouTube video that was all about SMART goals and what SMART goals are and how to create them. And that ended up being much more effective. So in CBE, you have to cut through the material and you have to ask yourself, does this help students perform the skill that they have to master? Does it help them do the thing? And you have to stay really focused on that. So as I'm working with faculty to build these CBE courses, there are some boxes I want them to type in. For each module, I'm going to have them say, what's the competency? What are the concepts that you're covering with that competency? What are some of the resources that you want to use? And then what's the assessment piece? I want to stay really focused and deliberate. But then once you have done that, once you've got the class designed on paper and you know what the competencies are, you know how you're going to assess it, then you can bring in the stuff that you have from your course shell that you already have. Now is the time at the end, near the end of the process. So if you already have some videos that you've created for your other courses, yeah, bring them in knowing, okay, this supports this competency. You are welcome to reuse some of the test questions if they support the competency. But you're going to bring in that existing traditional class at the end instead of at the beginning. This is also the place that you can make those strategic course design decisions. One choice that you had to make is, are you going to do choose your own adventure or linear? So in my English class, students might have to do three types of writing. Maybe they have to write like a persuasive and a narrative and a research-based essay. One doesn't build on another. You don't have to know how to write a narrative paper to know how to write a persuasive paper. So students could just go in and choose which module to do first. We could give them the autonomy. Here are the three modules. Go for it. Whichever one you want to do. But in a math class, things are typically scaffolded. You have to know how to subtract before you can do long division. So probably there you'll have a very linear pathway for students. But here at the end is where you get to make all of those decisions. When students submit an assessment, how am I going to give them feedback? Is it going to be written feedback? I love video feedback. I can hop on and in 2 minutes say, hey, I'm looking at your paper. Here's what's great about it. Here's what I would change. Here's what I would do in the future. That way, even if they pass, I'm giving them some feedback on how they can do better. And then ask yourself, what happens if they don't pass? So in a math class, if a student doesn't pass a test, maybe an extra supplemental folder opens up that has additional videos that explain things a different way, maybe some practice questions, and they can go review all that supplemental material before they retake the test. And probably the most important thing that I can encourage you is don't design a CBE course alone. Even classes I really understand, like English. I'm an English expert, instructional design. When I'm asked to design courses like that, I say, who am I working with? Because I don't work alone. I need a partner. Really, the CBE course building process works best when you're working with someone else, and I would encourage you, see if you can find someone who's built a CBE class or even taken it or taught it, because you're going to have new ideas. You'll be able to brainstorm problems, and you'll just be able to make sure that you're efficient through that process. So I have found that one of the number one indicators of success is whether the individual has support of someone else, just to be able to talk things through. So one of my favorite things about CBE is just sharing the cool ideas that I see. I love it. I love the awesome things that are happening within the realm of CBE. It is more than just quizzes and papers. So let me talk through some of the cool things that I've seen recently. Actually, at Lewis and Clark, they've got a criminal justice CBE class, and students are going to learn about the court system and the prison system and then the police system of the US. That's what they're learning about throughout the course. Then they're going to do a narrated PowerPoint comparing the US system with another country, a country of their choosing. What better way to show that you understand your own country by comparing it? Hey, this is the same, this is different. Here are some things that I've noticed about the two. I'm excited to hear how that works out. In a public safety course that I worked with, they have to pretend that they have to do a press conference. Your city's flooding. You have been asked to do a press conference. Here's the scenario. What information do you share? Do you talk about that nursing home that's in the line of the fire? Do you not talk about it? And so they have to show the skill of being able to have a press conference in that safety situation. And just a little plug, if you have ideas of innovative things that are going on in CBE, I love to hear about them. I could spend days just talking about the awesome assessments that I've seen, because I truly believe that we all benefit when we share ideas. So, just some key takeaways. I would encourage you, don't try to fit cake into cupcakes. If you are designing a CBE course, begin by designing a CBE course. Don't start with the current shell that you have. CBE forces us to ask a hard question. If students can't show they've mastered it, did we really even teach it? So I think, Dr. Sue, do we have some time for some questions?
Yes, we do. We have
Okay, great.
about, we have about um, 8, 10 minutes.
Awesome. I'd love to answer any questions or hear any cool ideas that you have.
Brandy, I really like how you've incorporated AI so much into your work. I'm impressed.
Thanks. And I'm trying to be deliberate as far as AI and assessment pieces as well. AI is out there and we need to be aware of that. And if we just ask students to write a paper that they can easily put into AI, we're doing them a disservice and ourselves. So I try to say, if we're designing this, knowing the AI is out there, what can we do? If we're asking them to write a paper, maybe they have to hop on and explain why they like hop on a video, hop on an audio, and explain why you did what you did in the paper. Just thinking through how we can add that human component. I'm constantly working on that piece.
Brandy, what course did you learn the most from designing?
Ooh, I think the criminal justice and public safety courses, I don't know a lot in those areas. So that's the great thing about instructional design is that I get to learn everything as I build these courses. And they're fields that I don't know much about. And I've learned a great deal there. And I love those courses because you can bring in those authentic assessments. What would you do in this situation? Actually, we have a criminal justice course where we ask students to read through everything that happened in the Uvalde shooting and make a timeline of what they think should have happened. Like, here's what happened. What do you think should have happened? So it's a great way for them to go back and analyze something. Are there ways to incorporate teamwork with CBE? I've heard concerns around courses being self paced that don't allow for team engagement. Yeah, so that's always a hard situation for me. Um, Whenever someone says, I want to do a group work or a group project, I say, is it one of your competencies for your course? Like, is it required? For something like speech, maybe you have to be able to work with a team. Then we have to figure it out. But sometimes we incorporate group work just because we think it's good for students to be able to have group work. In those situations, I say, let's not use group work. So there are a couple of options with group work. You can have the first 2 weeks be synchronous. So the first 2 weeks, you're all going to do a project. Then after that, you're going to go at your own pace through the rest of the course. But I would say before you attempt any of that, really ask yourself if group work is a requirement for the course. Sometimes we do it because we think it's good for students to do. And is it? Um, do we need that group project? It can be very difficult within CBE. And I'll be honest, a lot of the flops that I saw in CBE did involve group work in some way. Sometimes vertically integrated teams combine students at different levels, but contributing different things. Is this compatible with CBE? I don't know. I'd love to talk through it. And sometimes you don't know until you try it. So with CBE, one of the things you have to be willing to do is try it out. Let's try it out. Let's see how students do with it. Let's see if they all kind of wind up in this module at the same time to be able to do this. Or is it going to be too widely different where it's going to be a big failure? You can't expect to be able to make a course and have it be perfect from the beginning. I'm sorry, it's not. There's going to be changes that need to be made that first time. I'd love to know more about vertically integrated teams and how it might work with CBE. And I can't tell you. I can't tell you definitively whether something will or will not work. I can say in the past, in certain situations, things haven't worked, but maybe in the future with your students it would. Remember that each demographic is a little bit different. Yeah, and what we see is that in some programs, maybe the capstone, if it's a bachelor's degree, the last course requires a big team project that they do. It is competency based, but they know that during this 12 weeks or 7 weeks or however long it is, they're going to have to work together and they're going to have to work with other people. So looking for ways to do that in our programs is important. And I would love ideas. I would love what you've done successfully. It's always interesting how something can work in one situation at one university and be a total failure in other situations.
Any other questions?
I have a question. So when you're launching a new CBE, where does it belong structurally within a university? For example, at East Texas A&M, you have it within the College of Innovation and Design. So and all of the CBE programs are there. So that's more of a centralized model, or should it be completely decentralized? In other words, let the colleges or schools manage their own CBE models, programs, or should it be a hybrid? So where does it belong?
That's a great question. So right now I'm at East Texas and CBE stays within the College of Innovation and Design. But some of our institutions that we work closely with, it's just a launching point. So maybe they have a CBE college, they launch a CBE program, then they send it over to their respective departments. It goes back to the English department, it goes back to the math department. We honestly recently just said, man, that would be so much easier for us if we designed the courses, we made sure that they were good, and then we sent them on their way. There are some real benefits of that. There are some benefits of keeping them centralized. So I think the question is going to be a lot about faculty support. Do you have the individuals within all the colleges who understand CID and the needs of CID and how to support it? And I think it's also going to be about design. Do you have someone who's able to make those changes? Because there are changes that need to be made. Every couple of iterations of a course, oh, that link isn't working. Oh, we need to revise this. Too many students are doing that. So I can't give you a definitive answer. There are lots of different ways that it's done. And there are benefits and drawbacks. But yeah, some they're all in one college is all the CBE, and some there's CBE components in all the different programs, and they both have benefits.
Okay, Brandy, I think we're about out of time. We're going to give everybody a little bit of a break before the panel. But thank you. What a wonderful job you did. No surprise. And thanks to everybody for joining. And I think we can leave the room and I'm going to stop recording.